Here's one player every MLB team should trade for this year at the trade deadline. And sorry for not uploading on this channel a little bit as of late. You guys probably know me from my NBA content. And with the NBA offseason being in full swing, you had the draft, free agency was caught up a lot in that action. So hope to be more consistent uploading in July because we got the All-Star break and the trade deadline is at the end of the month. So we're going to have different buyers and sellers in this video. We're going to start off with a buyer, a team that I was dead wrong on with my season predictions going into the year, the Toronto Blue Jays, the team that is at the top of the AL East right now. They are 54-38. They are currently on a 10-game winning streak and have been one of the more fun teams to watch in Major League Baseball. They're obviously going to be a buyer, and I believe they should go out and add another starting pitcher. Right now, their depth is Kevin Gausman at 34, Barrios at 31, Bassett at 36, Scherzer at 41, Eric Lauer is in the rotation right now. Let's go out and get one of the best pitchers on the market, Seth Lugo from the Kansas City Royals, somebody that just gives you quality start after quality start. He's basically gone 6 innings and less than 2 earned runs each of his last 5 starts. He's got a 2.67 ERA on the year in 17 starts, 101 innings, and would fit like a glove in this Toronto Blue Jays rotation. With the Kansas City Royals right now, 3 games under 500 at 45-48 and 14 games back of the division leading Detroit Tigers. They could be in sell mode with Seth Lugo potentially being an unrestricted free agent in a few months. The Blue Jays have built up their farm system to make it somewhat decent over the last few years, and for a team that just paid big time money for Vladimir Guerrero, with George Springer having a resurgence and he should have been an all-star, Bo Bichette is having a good contract year, Addison Barger breaking out, this team can go out and add a top of the line starting pitcher. Go add Seth Lugo from the Kansas City Royals. He may cost a little bit less since he's an expiring deal, and try to win the World Series in a wide open American League. Another team that's most likely going to be a buyer, they haven't been great over the last few weeks, the New York Yankees. They're still 50-41. They're only 3.5 games back of the Toronto Blue Jays and could definitely win the American League East by the end of the year, but they're a team that has just been ravaged by injuries, specifically in the starting rotation. I don't have a starting pitcher for them that I'm going to nominate here, but they could definitely go after a lot of the big names on the market, but they need an upgrade at third base. You got to move Jazz Chisholm back to second base full time and go out and get a Eugenio Suarez from the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that is going to be very prominent in this video in terms of selling off some of their pieces as they are slightly under 500 at the moment. The Yankees desperately need a third baseman. They can afford Suarez's contract. He's owed $15 million this year and will be a free agent at the end of the season. So he's a third baseman rental at 33 years old. He's been a very consistent power bat for most of his career, an underrated 300 home run career. He had 30 home runs last year. He's already at 28 home runs this year, an 876 OPS. You can get a massive upgrade at the hot corner, and now you can have one of the more lethal lineups in the American League East as you're trying to get back that crown that the Blue Jays recently stole from you. They're always a tough team to figure out if they're going to buy or they're going to sell, and I do have the Tampa Bay Rays here, and I think that they're going to end up doing a little bit of both like they usually do. I think they could end up trading Pete Fairbanks. It's just something the Rays have done in the past. They could try to sell high on a closer. I don't think they're going to end up moving Brandon Wow or Yandy Diaz. They're a team that could probably look to add another bullpen arm. They could also look to add another starting pitcher just because Shane McClanahan had that tricep setback. I think they could end up looking to trade away Pete Fairbanks. So for some of these teams in this video, I do think they can look at a bunch of different prospects. So I think a team that could target Pete Fairbanks that has a smaller window than the Rays are the Texas Rangers. So I wonder what type of prospect the Rangers would be able to get from Texas in exchange for Pete Fairbanks. We saw Jason Adam and AJ Puck and Tanner Scott go for a lot last year at the deadline. What would Fairbanks go for this year? He's got a 2.34 ERA in 35 games. He's got 15 saves on the year in 34 innings pitched. He has a 2026 team option. So you'd get another year of control. Could they maybe get Winston Santos, Malcolm Moore, Emiliano Toledo, Alejandro Rosario, Alejandro Osuna from the Texas Rangers and just try to get one of their top 10 prospects? Because I could definitely see the Rangers being a buyer at the deadline. Another team I have no idea what they're going to do, the Boston Red Sox. They are 48-45. They are currently the 4th spot in the American League East, but they're 8-2 in their last 10. Roman Anthony is heating up. Wilyer Abreu demolishes right-handed hitters, and this team could definitely look to add another starting pitcher at the deadline if they're serious about contending in the 2025 season. We thought maybe they weren't going to be as serious after trading Rafi Devers to the San Francisco Giants, so they could look to add another bat, but it makes sense to add another starter. Lucas Giolito's pitching a lot better as of late. Brian Bayo just pitched a complete game. Garrett Crochet is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and although Walker Buehler has been disappointing, this team could definitely use some bullpen help or another starting pitcher, and they've recently been linked to Joe Ryan. So that's who I'm going to nominate here for the Boston Red Sox. Joe Ryan is arbitration eligible in 2026, and he's a free agent in 2028. So they would have multiple years of control for Joe Ryan, who this year has a 2.76 ERA. If you remember, he was traded to Minnesota back in 2021 for Nelson Cruz at that trade deadline, and he's just been a rock solid starting pitcher. He's pitched over 130 innings each of the last 3 years, and he'd be exactly what the Boston Red Sox need at the top of the rotation. And then you can have this year Crochet, Bello, Giolito, Ryan, and Buehler, and then everybody but Buehler going forward, and you have a great farm system that you can look to give up some of those prospects to go out and get Joe Ryan. You try your best to hold on to Marcelo Meyer, but could you dangle Franklin Arias? Could you dangle the password? Oriolian Cespedes, James Tibbs? They have plenty of guys that they can look to deal from their farm system. And they also have some MLB ready bats if the Twins don't want to go out and get somebody that's a little bit younger. Could they look to trade a Wilyer Abreu or a Jarren Duran? Either way, I think Joe Ryan would fit very well in Boston. And then I do think that the Baltimore Orioles should sell at the deadline. They are currently 10 games under 500. They've been playing a little bit better as of late, but it's still at the 5 spot in a very competitive American League East. I think they could look to trade a bunch of different guys, Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins, but also could they look to trade Felix Bautista, who missed all of last year's season due to Tommy John, and he's been pitching very well this year for the Baltimore Orioles. He's got a 2.48 ERA in 32 innings. He looks as back as he was in that 2023 season, where he was an all-star and finished 11th in Cy Young voting for the Baltimore Orioles. He's a free agent in 2028, so a team like the Philadelphia Phillies would get multiple years of control. There is another player that the Baltimore Orioles can trade in Cedric Mullins, so they're going to have an opening at center field. Could they somehow get Justin Crawford from the Philadelphia Phillies, a former first-round pick that's had over an 800 OPS each of the last 3 seasons in the minor leagues? Could they maybe get somebody like him, that good of a prospect, for 3 years of control for a closer the Phillies desperately need? Their window is closing with their older core as well. You can get Bautista, who's 30 years old, and he'd be a massive upgrade over Jordan Romano. This is a little bit of a pipe dream for Baltimore, but I'd like to see them try to pull something like this off. For the New York Mets, they're a team that operates as a small market team, but isn't afraid to make the big splash or two. Somebody like David Stearns, who has his small market roots from Milwaukee, has made a lot of good moves for the Mets on the margins. Obviously, they can go out and get somebody like Juan Soto. They're currently tied with the Philadelphia Phillies at the top of the NL East. They've had a couple injuries to their starting pitching depth as of late. Kodai Senga is going to be back very soon, but they did lose Griffin Canning for the year. They're going to get back Sean Manaea into this rotation full time. So could they be a team that looks to add a bat? They could definitely use another center fielder if they wanted to have McNeil as the full-time second baseman, and they can look to get an upgrade over Tyron Taylor or Jose Siri when he comes back. How about Cedric Mullins from the Baltimore Orioles? He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's somebody that has a 710 OPS, and he broke out in 2021, but really hasn't captured that consistent bat since that season. So it probably wouldn't even cost the Mets a top 10 prospect because Cedric Mullins is a rental, but definitely has a little bit more upside as a bat over Tyrone Taylor when we get closer to playoff time. And especially if Jose Siri is somebody you can't rely on either, because he's a super volatile bat as well. I could also see the Mets trying to go after a big name starting pitcher, but they do have a ton of pitching depth. Maybe they could dangle one of their top pitching prospects if they were going to actually go after a Seth Lugo, have a reunion there, maybe go after somebody like Zach Gallen or Walker Buehler. But I could see the Mets just looking to add a bat, and that could just end up being Cedric Mullins from the Baltimore Orioles. So the Phillies could definitely go after a center fielder like Cedric Mullins. They could definitely go after a closer like Felix Bautista, but another closer I think they should try to go after, Johan Duran of the Minnesota Twins. Another closing pitcher that is under control for 3 more years. He's not a free agent until 2028, and he's somebody that throws 100 miles an hour. He's got a 1.56 ERA this year for the Minnesota Twins, and the Twins could be selling high on Duran. We know that these closers are very volatile. There was a time where the Minnesota Twins gave up a decent amount for Jorge Lopez a couple years ago. One of those guys ended up being Yanier Cano. So could the Minnesota Twins look to sell high on Johan Duran for a team that wants to win now in the Philadelphia Phillies? Maybe it's an Aiden Miller, maybe it's a Justin Crawford, maybe it's a Mick Abel. Could they get one of those top end prospects so Philadelphia can get one of the more electric closers in baseball? It can really complete their bullpen. We know they have one of the best starting rotations in the league. And with Harper, Turner, Castellanos, Schwarber all getting older, you can go out and get Johan Duran so you don't have to worry about the ninth from what you had to over the last few years watching Craig Kimbrell, Carlos Estevez, and now Jordan Romano close out games for you at times. I think the Atlanta Braves are going to end up being sellers at the deadline. They could definitely go on a run in the second half. We've seen it before back in 2021, but they're 39-51 right now. They're 2-8 in their last 10. I think they could look to trade away Marcell Ozuna, who's a free agent at the end of the year and is still one of the more consistent power bats in the game of baseball. Now, he is having a little bit of a down year this season, but he's walking a ton. He's got a 746 OPS, which isn't too bad in a down year, 11 home runs on the year in 86 games. He could be a perfect designated hitting option for the Seattle Mariners, a team that is always looking to add power bats, and they have arguably the best farm system in baseball. They're not going to have to give up one of their top 5 prospects. Could they get it done with a Michael Arroyo, a Johnny Farmello? Maybe it's a Ryan Sloan or a Logan Evans or a Tyler Locklear. Maybe it's a Ty Pete. One of those guys could go back to Atlanta in exchange for Marcell Ozuna. So for Atlanta, I would say just target one of Seattle's deep farm system prospects, and you're not going to re-sign Marcell Ozuna anyway, so try to get something before he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. The Washington Nationals, I could definitely see them trading 2 pitchers at the deadline, 1 relief pitcher and 1 starting pitcher. The relief pitcher is Kyle Finnegan, who could have definitely gotten traded last year, and 1 starter is Michael Soroka at 28 years old. I think they could look to target a prospect from the New York Yankees, and that could be Everson Pereira, who is the Yankees' 12th ranked prospect. He hasn't been a great batter at the MLB level. Last was up in 2023, but he's raked over the last few years in minor league baseball. An 858 OPS in 2024, an 864 OPS this year with the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Raiders. So that is somebody Washington could target, because I don't think they're going to get a great return for one of those guys. Maybe at the premium that relief pitchers can come at, they can get something a little bit better for Kyle Finnegan. So I'd maybe just call it the Yankees, see if they want to add a Soroka and get Everson Pereira, just because Soroka is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And for the Miami Marlins, they're most likely going to try to trade away Sandy Alcantara if they can get a good return for him. I think a team that's going to be very interested in Sandy will be the LA Dodgers. So I'd like to see them go after some of the Dodgers prospects. I don't think they're getting a Jose DePaula or a Zaire Hope for a Sandy Alcantara. Maybe could they get an Alex Freeland or Jackson Ferris or a River Ryan or Nick Frasso in exchange for Sandy Alcantara, just because we know that this Miami Marlins team is still rebuilding. They have been a little bit better as of late, though. They are 42-48. They're 7-3 in their last 10. I don't see them being a buyer, and maybe this recent hot stretch will make them be a little bit hesitant in trading away Sandy Alcantara. There's been a lot of exciting bats in the Marlins lineup this year in Augustin Ramirez and Kyle Stowers, and with Edward Cabrera having a little bit of a resurgence, I think they should still trade away Sandy, though. You got Yuri Perez back. You still have some pitchers in the minors that are on the come up. Try to replenish that farm system, which definitely lacks those top end bats right now. For the Detroit Tigers, I would like to see them go out and get a top end closer. I think there'd be a ton of them on the market right now. Currently, they do have Will Vest closing out games for them, but I think you could do a little bit better, or at least have another option, right? The Detroit Tigers are at the top of the AL Central. They are currently 59-34, 8-2 in their last 10, a plus 112 point differential right now. I think they can go out and get Felix Bautista from the Baltimore. I think they can go out and get Felix Bautista from the Baltimore Orioles. They do have a semi-deep farm system as it is, so maybe they would have to deal away 1 or 2 of their top 10 prospects, but you definitely wouldn't have to trade away Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, or Bryce Rayner. And if the Baltimore Orioles are willing to sell high on Felix Bautista, maybe you can have the depth that can go back to Baltimore, and you could try to get a top-end closer to try to win the World Series this year. The Tigers have been electric to watch, right? With Tariq Skubal, who could win another Cy Young award. Gleyber Torres, who was an all-star this year. Riley Green is breaking out as one of the best young outfielders in the game of baseball and has elevated himself into a new tier this year. You even got a little bit of a Javier Baez resurgence as well. I'd like to see them go all in and add another top-end closer, because I don't think they're getting one of these other top-end closers that could be on the market, and that is Emmanuel Clase. Now, for the Guardians, I think there is a chance they could trade away Clase. This has not been a good year this season under Stephen Voigt. They are currently 42 and 48. They're the 4th spot in the AL Central. They have a negative 53 point differential and have a 2-8 record in their last 10 games. Clase was very inconsistent to start off the year. He's looked a little bit better as of late. He's got a 3.12 ERA. He's got 19 saves and 40 innings pitched. I'll keep going back to the Philadelphia Phillies. I wonder if Dave Dombrowski is going to be very aggressive this year to add a top closer on the market. I mentioned that Felix Bautista could be an interesting target for them, or Johan Duran, or maybe it would be Emmanuel Clase. So could they somehow get an Aiden Miller? I think the Guardians are always looking to add bats. They haven't really had the deepest lineup in the world after Jose Ramirez and some others over the last few years. So this is for the Guardians' pipe dream. Could they maybe get somebody like Aiden Miller for Emmanuel Clase, or somebody like Justin Crawford? It just really depends how aggressive Philadelphia will get. For the Minnesota Twins, if they were going to actually trade away somebody like Joe Ryan, I wonder if they can get a premier return from the Boston Red Sox. So you could definitely talk about some of their top end prospects, Franklin Arias, the password, James Tibbs, that could go back to the Minnesota Twins. But could they maybe get Wilyer Abreu? I know he's a platoon hitter right now, and he's somebody that just hits against right-handed pitchers, but he's somebody that has an 831 OPS. He had an 862 OPS as a rookie in a smaller sample size, a 781 OPS in his first full rookie season last year, and he's hitting yet again. Wilyer Abreu just rakes. He's got 17 home runs this year. He's got 5 more years of control at 26 years old. He could be definitely what Minnesota is looking to have in the corner outfield over time, just because Matt Wallner has not been great this year. And you have the inconsistent bat in Harrison Bader. And I just think you have your infield kind of figured out over time. And obviously you do have Emmanuel Rodriguez, who's going to hopefully be up very soon, who's a top outfield prospect, and Walker Jenkins as well. So let's complete that outfield, or at least have another DH option in Wilyer Abreu, or maybe it's just going to be a different prospect. But I do think there could be a trade to be made between the Boston Red Sox and the Minnesota Twins, or hey, maybe it's Johan Duran in this deal as well, because I mentioned earlier that the Red Sox could definitely look to add another reliever or two. I do think the Kansas City Royals should trade away Seth Lugo this year at the deadline. They are 3 games under 500. They have been a little bit better as of late, but they're a team that needs to add bats around Bobby Witt Jr., as their lineup has been a little bit disappointing. Jack Caglione is up now. Jonathan India maybe hasn't been as, after trading away Brady Singer for him. They also have Chris Bubich and Cole Reagans, who's on the IL, and Noah Cameron as a rookie this season. They have depth with their starting rotation that they could be okay trading away Seth Lugo, who is 35 years old. So we know that the Chicago Cubs are going to be very aggressive this year, trying to add another arm or two. Could they end up getting a Kevin Alcantara or James Triantos or Fernando Cruz or one of those guys from the Cubs to give Chicago a top-end arm for the playoffs? I think they could be really good trade partners this year. And I mentioned before how the New York Mets could be interested in another center fielder. What is the value on Luis Robert, right? He definitely peaked in value back in that 2023 season, where he had a 5-win season. He had an 857 OPS. And then last year, he had a 657 OPS and a 587 OPS this year. He does have a team option still for a decent amount of 2026 and 2027, but we're at the point where Chicago may just look to decline that. So I really wonder what his value is for Luis Robert. I think the Mets could look to try to make a big time swing. Maybe it would end up being the San Diego Padres. We know that AJ Preller likes to go after those big names at the deadline. Would the Mets be willing to part ways with a Nick Morabito or somebody like an AJ Ewing who's broken out this year, or a Jacob Reimer, or maybe the San Diego Padres would look to trade some of their depth pieces in their farm as well, even though it's thinned out over the years, because they're not going to trade away a Leo DeVries or an Ethan Salas or even a Cash Mayfield for a Luis Robert at this point. But I feel like the White Sox just have to part ways with Robert, even if it's for pennies on the dollar at this point. So for the Cubs, you can mention any starting pitcher on the market, right? It could be guys we talked about, like a Seth Lugo, like a Joe Ryan. I think they can also go after Zach Gallen, but for them specifically, I'm just going to talk about Merrill Kelly. Like Zach Gallen, he's a free agent at the end of the year. We know Merrill Kelly balled out for the Diamondbacks in the playoffs back in 2023 with major games against the LA Dodgers and the Philadelphia Phillies and even the Texas Rangers. He's somebody this year that has been consistent. Yet again, he's had a mid to high 3s ERA over the last few years. Last year, he was banged up a little bit, but this year, he's healthy again. Already at 111 innings pitched. He's got a 3.41 ERA. Their underlying metrics look good, and he could be a very good add to the Chicago Cubs, who, like I said, are going all in this year. They want to add another starter. They're currently at the top of the NL Central for the first time in a little bit. They're 54 and 37. The Brewers are right behind them, so they got to be aggressive to add a name, and I really like the idea of Merrill Kelly in Chicago. I feel like the St. Louis Cardinals are going to try to soft buy at the deadline. They are 49 and 43, and it would probably be wise to trade away guys like Sonny Gray if possible, or maybe Nolan Arenado, or Ryan Helsley, who's a free agent at the end of the year. but I just feel like they're going to buy, right? I mean, they are above 500. They're only 5.5 games back of the Cubs, so you never know. They could definitely try to get one of those wild card spots as well. So could they just try to get another innings eater, another older pitcher? It's something they've been doing over the last few years. Could they get Tyler Anderson from the LA Angels? He's been a consistent pitcher over the last 2 years. He was pretty good for the Angels last year. He had a 3.81 ERA and was their all-star representative. And he's also got a 4.19 ERA through 96 innings pitched this year. The FIP isn't great at a 4.84, but he would have a solid defense behind him over there in St. Louis. And it just feels like Tyler Anderson screams St. Louis Cardinal this year at the deadline. The Milwaukee Brewers probably wouldn't like to take on the whole contract, but if Colorado is willing to pay down some of it, I think the Rockies could get a solid prospect in return. Could the Milwaukee Brewers try to get Ryan McMahon from the Colorado Rockies, the worst team in Major League Baseball? 21-71. 50 games under 500. Just looking at a minus 243 point differential is wild. I mentioned that the Milwaukee Brewers have a strong farm system. I mean, you're not getting Jesus Mate or Luis Pena or Cooper Pratt, 3 OPS, but I do think there's still a solid hitter there, and he could be a good hitter at the hot corner over there in Milwaukee, as they definitely need a third baseman upgrade if they're trying to make a push this year in 2025. The Reds have an abysmal OPS through their corner outfielders. I think they could look to target Taylor Ward, who's always been in trade talks from the LA Angels. I just have no idea if the Angels are going to be sellers. They're about 3 games under 500. We'll get to them a little bit later, but I feel like Taylor Ward could net them a nice return. He's got 1 more year of arbitration in 2026, and he's a free agent in 2027. He's been another solid hitter this year, a 773 OPS. He's got 20 home runs yet again, 3 times out of the last 4 seasons. And like I mentioned, the OPS has just been terrible for Cincinnati Reds this year. They've had Will Benson, Gavin Lux playing corner outfielder now. Jake Fraley's on the IL, and obviously TJ Friedel has been a solid center fielder for them, but I think they could definitely look to add another bat in that lineup with Elly De La Cruz for a team that is still in contention to make a playoff spot. They're 46-46. Their season is far from over, so I do think the Reds are going to try to be a little bit aggressive, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just traded away a Nick Martinez this year at the deadline and were light sellers. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think they should try to trade away Mitch Keller. They're a team that is not going anywhere this season. They're one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. They're at the bottom of the NL Central, 38-55, 17 games back of the Chicago Cubs. We all know that they have the best pitcher, or at least one of the best pitchers in baseball, in Paul Skeens, at least the best pitcher at his age. They're a team that does have Mike Burrows at 25 years old. They have one of the best pitching prospects in baseball in Bubba Chandler. They also have Thomas Harrington in the farm as well. They need to add bats, or they at least need to add prospects that can hit. So I think they could look to call up an in-division rival, the Chicago Cubs, and try to get one of their top prospects for Mitch Keller, who does have a couple more years under contract. He's a free agent in 2029. He's making a decent amount of money at $16 million next year, $18 million in 2027, and $20 million in 2028. But he's got a 3.58 ERA this year. He's been very consistent, and I don't think they would be able to get an Owen Casey, but could they get a Moises Ballesteros? Could they get a Jefferson Rojas, a Kelvin Alcantara, James Strantos? One of those guys for Mitch Keller, I think could make sense for both teams. For the Houston Astros, they're just trying to go all in one last time with this core. They're a team that does not have a great farm system right now, so it is going to be very tough for them to buy, but they've been one of the better teams in baseball this year yet again. 55-37. Cam Smith has been coming alive as of late. Isaac Paredes has been a good addition for them. Jose Altuve, Jake Myers has been great for them this year. I think they could look to add another starting pitcher. You got Hunter Brown, who's been one of the best pitchers this year. You have Framber Valdez, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Could you maybe get enough prospects to go out and get Zach Gallen, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year? You could pay down his whole contract, and he's having a down year as well. I'm not sure if there's going to be maybe a qualifying offer signed in Arizona. Could they look to trade him if they can get something at the deadline? He does have a 5.15 ERA this year, but has looked very good in his last 2 starts. Houston does not have a great farm system, but could Bryce Matthews, Jacob Melton, Walker Janik, Anderson Brito, Kevin Alvarez maybe get it done? It would be tough. They would have to consolidate a lot of those guys if they are serious about going after Zach Gallen, but I'd like to see Houston make a win now push. I talked about it before with the Atlanta Braves, but I think that the Seattle Mariners should definitely go after Marcell Ozuna. This is one of the deeper farm systems in baseball. They're about 5 games above 500 this year. And that's with Julio Rodriguez, I know he's an all-star, but being very disappointing. You have Cal Raleigh playing at an MVP level. JP Crawford has been very good for them this year. I'd like to see another batter added to that lineup. Jorge Polanco is your DH right now, but you could definitely move him around. So try to go after Marcell Ozuna, who definitely has the power to be all right at T-Mobile Park, which is not a very hitter-friendly park, but I think it's worth it to try to get that power bat. He hit 40 home runs in 2023, 39 home runs in 2024. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so he shouldn't cost you too much. I don't think you're going to really have to go into your top 5 of prospects, and this farm system is so deep. Try to make a win now move in Seattle. I think Texas is also going to try to make another win now move as well. Now, they don't have a great farm system like Seattle. It's definitely a better farm system than Houston. Could they also call up the Arizona Diamondbacks, who, like I said, we're going to be very prominent as sellers here? They have a bunch of guys that are free agents at the end of the year. Merrill Kelly, who we talked about. Eugenio Suarez, we've talked about. Zach Allen, we've talked about. What about Josh Naylor, who can also be a free agent at the end of the year? He's got an 822 OPS this year, a 296 batting average. The Texas Rangers could definitely look for an upgrade at first base. Right now, that is Jake Berger for them. But Naylor can also be a DH, and they can be intertwined. He's got 11 home runs this year, 58 RBIs in Arizona at 28 years old. We'll see if the Rangers would be willing to part ways with definitely not a Sebastian Walcott, maybe not a Malcolm Moore, but some other guys in their top 10 of their system. But I like the idea of Josh Naylor in Texas because Jacob deGrom, Corey Seager, they're not getting any younger. Let's try to be a little bit aggressive. And here's the most Angels trade target at the deadline, because they're probably not going to sell, right? Although they probably should try to get a prospect from the Reds for Taylor Ward, try to get a prospect from the Cardinals for Tyler Anderson. I just see them as a Charlie Morton team. I just really do. He still has a 5.47 ERA this year, but he's looked pretty good over his last 4 starts. He's got at least 5 innings, allowing 3 runs or less in those starts. But right now, Yusei Kikuchi, Jose Soriano, Kyle Hendricks, Tyler Anderson. Let's just try to get another older pitcher there in LA. It just feels like something Perry Manassian and Artie Moreno would want to do here at the deadline. They're 44 and 47. They should sell, but I just never know with the Angels. And for the no designated city Athletics, I think they're probably going to look to trade away Luis Severino, who has not been great so far this year in Sacramento, but he's somebody that has some very solid, or interesting at least, home road splits. He does not pitch well at home. He pitches a lot better on the road. He's 31 years old, but he definitely has a decent amount of money remaining on his contract, around $17 million for the next 2 years. But would a team like Toronto that doesn't have the best farm system in the world would not want to give up one of their top end guys for somebody like a Seth Lugo if they were going to go after one of those names? So could they be interested in a Luis Severino? I don't think they would have to give up maybe a Ricky Tiedemann, but what about a Jake Bloss? What about a Kendry Rojas, a Fernando Perez? I think those could be interesting guys for the Athletics going forward. They've had some interesting moments this year. They have not been great over the last month though, but they have a foundation in the lineup with Lawrence Butler, Jacob Wilson, Brent Rooker, Nick Kurtz, Shea Langoliers, and Tyler Soderstrom. Even Max Muncy can show some flashes. Denzel Clark in the outfield. They just need pitching depth in the farm system. So if they can get maybe any of the pitching prospects from a team like Toronto or maybe St. Louis that's not looking at a top end starter, but more of a number 3. For the LA Dodgers, I think they could definitely be a Sandy Alcantara team. It just feels like a team that can absorb the contract and that is just going to pitch so much better when he gets to Los Angeles. Sandy, though, this year has a 7 ERA still. It's actually mind-blowing to see that ERA. So maybe there's just going to be nothing they can get back for him. He pitched really good against Pittsburgh back in the beginning of June and then struggled a little bit against Philadelphia, but looked all right. He was pretty good against Atlanta, but has struggled recently against Arizona and Milwaukee. He just feels like somebody the Dodgers could fix right away. They have such a deep farm system. You're not giving up a Jose DePaula or Zaire Hope. I talked about this before with the Miami Marlins, but maybe they can give out some of their depth like a Nick Frosso and a River Ryan that could go back to the Miami Marlins. For the San Francisco Giants, I'd like to see them be somewhat aggressive at the deadline. Now, they already made a massive move this year, so I wouldn't be shocked if they were a little bit more quiet when they got Rafael Devers, but they're 51 and 42. They're the 2 spot in the NL West. They're only 5 games back, so it's definitely possible for them to catch the Dodgers. Right now, Dominic Smith is starting for them at first base. You got Matt Chapman at the hot corner. You got Rafael Devers being a DH. Try to get Ryan O'Hearn from the Baltimore Orioles. He could be one of the best first basemen on the market. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and he's somebody with an 840 OPS this year, a 286 batting average, and he's got 11 home runs, 32 RBIs. Would be a massive upgrade for you at the first baseman spot, and I feel like Ryan O'Hearn could be a good fit on any one of these teams that I mentioned. I just like him the most in San Francisco. And for the San Diego Padres, I think they could be a team that takes a swing on Luis Robert. It just feels like a player that AJ Preller would go after. They could look to add another starter as well. I know Michael King's on the IL. Dylan Cease been a little bit disappointing this year. How much can you rely on a 38-year-old Yu Darvish, but I feel like they can look to add another outfield bat as well. You can make Gavin Sheets your DH again because he's not a good fielder whatsoever. Try to get Luis Robert, who's going to basically cost you pennies on the dollar, and maybe he just needs to be in a different situation where they're going to be a little bit more competitive, and they're a team right now that is currently 49-42. They could definitely make the playoffs, so I'd like to see them add a big name like Luis Robert, but it wouldn't cost them a lot. As for the Arizona Diamondbacks, there's so many different guys that I could talk about them moving, so I don't think they're going to be buyers by any means. I still like the foundation this team has with Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Geraldo Perdomo at the top. Maybe they re-sign one of these guys at the end of the year. You have Jordan Waller in your farm system as well, but I think they can get great prospects. This is a seller's market 100%. You could dangle Gallen, Merrill Kelly, maybe somebody like Josh Naylor or Eugenio Suarez at the deadline. They've just been ravaged by injuries this year. Corbin Burns with Tommy John, Jordan Montgomery got hurt this year. AJ Puck, Justin Martinez, Kendall Graveman, Shelby Miller, all these guys have been hurt this season. So just try to get prospects by any means. That's who I'm targeting there for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then last but not least, the Colorado Rockies, a team that is 21-71. I talked about them trading away Ryan McMahon. Could they try to get some type of prospects from the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for McMahon, or some cheaper guys that have control over the next few years? Could they maybe try to get some players from the New York Yankees? Would they try to buy low for Ryan McMahon? I think that's just what they need to go with. I mean, the Rockies are 21-71. I'd like to them just to sell the team, to be honest with you. And that is going to be for me. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know if you agree with or disagree with any of those names and candidates I mentioned for your favorite teams down below. If you did enjoy, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe because I'm going to be more consistent uploading up until the trade deadline. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.